Parenting can be tough. Our kids are facing all the challenges of growing up, combined with many more in our fast-paced, digitally connected world. And that also makes it tough to be a parent. How are we supposed to connect with our children or guide them if they refuse to listen to us, or if they're always doing the opposite of what we say? In this video, I want to outline 3 styles of parenting that I see all the time, which don't work, and actually often make the situation a lot worse. When we know what not to do, it can make it easier to see what we can do instead. So let's get started. There's a lot of parenting theories out there, and there are definitely some parenting styles that do not work and can actually end up backfiring on us with our kids. In fact, I actually created a parenting course called Connection and Credibility, and in that course I address many of these negative parenting behaviors. I call them the deadly dozen relationship killers. But for now, let's just talk about 3 of these. First, relationship killer: fixing for them what they can and should fix for themselves. An example of this is difficult emotions that kids might be experiencing. They need to learn to feel those emotions. When your child is experiencing a difficult emotion, what's often best is just a little bit of empathy without you giving them advice or instructions on how to deal with whatever is difficult for them. I'll share a real story with my daughter to illustrate what I mean. At the time this happened, we were right in the middle of COVID-19 pandemic. I had personally been relatively unaffected by the pandemic, but my daughter in particular had been suffering a lot. This is a 17-year-old girl that loves her friends, loves school, loves volleyball. She is a lover of life, and this kid wants to snatch every possible moment of joy out of her life. But now, because of the pandemic, she's lost most of her daily contact with her friends. She missed the last part of her junior year in high school, and she had her club volleyball season get shut down completely. Well, volleyball was her life, and up until this point, she had worked so hard to be ready for this season. And it was actually going to be the time that a lot of college coaches were going to come calling, and now, she's stuck at home dealing with all these disappointments. It was really difficult to watch her experience this, and I would try to buoy her up. I wanted to help her in some way, but nothing I said ever really seemed to work. There were just a number of disappointments and letdowns, and there was nothing I could do about it. So in the midst of all this, I consciously decided that I was going to suffer with her. That sounds kind of funny. Don't get me wrong. I don't mean that I was going to lie around on the couch all day with a forlorn expression on my face and not allow myself to have any joy. I just mean that most of my expressions to her would now come in the form of something like, I'm really sorry, honey, I know this is hard for you. It's empathy. I wish things were different for you. I can see this is such a bummer for you. It was really just purely having empathy for her, not trying to fix or do anything. I stopped giving her advice. I stopped trying to encourage her, giving her guidance. And there was actually something special that happened when I stopped trying to fix her feelings or to make her feel better. Actually, just having someone to talk to occasionally seemed to make her feel better, at least in the moment. I know it's a strange concept, but suffering with others actually takes a lot of courage because we have to leave ourselves open to feeling what they're feeling. We have to be willing to take on some of their sadness and their pain, usually just by being with them and allowing them to talk about it. Another relationship killer is what I call authoritarian parenting. There's a parenting style out there, authoritarian parenting. It's the old school method. Just think about drill sergeants, my way or the highway. Compliance is the main rule. Well, we know from tons of research that authoritarian parenting will give you a compliant kid in the short term, but eventually they'll rebel. And I've seen this over and over and over. Kids that come from this parenting style are followers. They're always looking for somebody to tell them what to do. We know from research that they have low self-esteem. This parenting style is really good if you want to create resentment, and it's really poor if you're trying to create connection. In fact, there's a funny thing about control, and I call it the paradox of control. This is the paradox. The more control you try to have with people, the less influence you actually end up having. It always backfires. Let me illustrate this with a story from my childhood. My dad was a naval officer, so I grew up my entire life living on naval bases, and we moved all the time, every 2 years. Well, in 4th grade, I had the best experience of my life. We had Mr. Gordon as our teacher, and I loved Mr. Gordon. And I probably loved him because he loved me. He was fun, and I worshiped the ground he walked on. Mr. Gordon was a social activist, and I didn't really know what that meant at the time, but I knew he was concerned about social change. And one of his concerns was that the United States Navy was practicing blowing up their bombs on some island somewhere, and he felt like we had no right to do that. So one day, Mr. Gordon spent the whole day talking to us about this, and he wanted all of us kids to sign this petition to support this cause. And I was so excited because I wanted to do whatever Mr. Gordon wanted me to do. Well, so I ran home, I told my parents, especially my dad, who I also adored. I told him all about this. Let me give you a little background about my dad. He's this big, physically imposing, very strong man, very well respected, officer in the Navy. But with us kids, we adored him. He was gentle. And here I am telling him how awful the Navy was, the Navy that he was in. And I was clueless. I didn't even realize what I was saying to him. I was in 4th grade. So I told my dad about this bombing and, can you believe that we're doing that? And I will never forget his response. He said, listen, Todd, I'm going to share with you my view of this issue. And it's very different than how your teacher feels about it. And then I'm just going to let you make your own decision about what you want to do. And so he told me how he viewed this event. And it really was 100% opposite of how Mr. Gordon viewed it. And then he said to me, I'm going to leave the decision up to you. You can sign the petition if you want. I'm not going to stop you. Well, by the time he told me how he felt, the decision was over. I already knew what I was going to do. There's no way I was going to sign that petition. Why is that? Because of the influence that he had on me. He was not trying to control me. A relationship killer is when we try to over-control our kids. Now, when I was in 4th grade, I didn't know anything about anything. But because of the relationship that I had with my dad, and because he allowed me the freedom to make a lot of my own decisions, he had this natural ability to influence us and draw us in. And his influence came from that relationship, not from trying to control me. So before we go on to the 3rd relationship killer, I want to thank you for watching this video. None of us were handed a manual when our kids were born with all the rules and steps and things that we should do and things we shouldn't do. We end up learning by trial and error. And my channel is all about using my system of correcting and connecting to build a strong, trusting, influential relationship with your child. If that's the kind of thing you want to know more about, like this video, subscribe to my channel, and share with any friends you think would benefit. Now let's get back to this last relationship killer. Number 3 is parenting from a place of fear. This is very similar to being too controlling. It's very similar to what we see in authoritarian parenting. When we're fearful, when we're anxious, that leads to us over-controlling. We do it because we think it minimizes the risks, because what you're trying to do is decrease the odds that your child will make a mistake or behave in a way that will hurt them or hurt you, that it will decrease the risks that something bad will happen. The problem when we parent from a place of fear is that we're always asking ourselves the what if questions. What if he has drugs? What if he has sex? What if she fails school? I mean, the list is endless. And the real fear that many of us face is what if we lose them somehow? Or what if they destroy themselves? Or what if they destroy their future? When we parent from fear, we end up exerting as much control as we can so that our fears aren't realized. We think we're just keeping our kids safe, but it backfires. I'll give you a true example. My daughter, years ago, had a friend whose parents would not even allow her to eat school lunch at the same table as boys. They thought she would end up doing something bad with the boys. They controlled every aspect of her life. They were constantly fearful that she'd make some mistake that she couldn't recover from. And they did end up losing her. As soon as she was 18, she got out of that house as fast as she could. Just remember, fearful parenting is disconnecting parenting. We want to be connected parents. So by controlling her, they were losing her. And when we parent from fear, we will lose our kids as well. Do you sometimes struggle to discipline your child effectively? Do they misbehave or act out or leave you scratching your head wondering what to do or even how to reach them at all? If that's the case, don't worry. I've created a free ebook about how to discipline effectively, and believe me, this is not what you think. This will help you correct and connect with your child. It contains information from 25 years of me being a clinical psychologist, and it's designed and put together to give you an understanding of effective parenting tools, and it will also give you practical steps you can take starting today. Just go to drtoddtalks.com or click the link in the video description below. Give me your details and I'll send it right over to you.